What you're about to hear is predictive of the severe abuse by the black men who follow the two men you're about to hear speaking heap upon the black women who are in their midst, who follow them, who gather for them and do the work for them. I guarantee you, every single time. Here you go.
Okay, read.
And in that day, the branch of the Lord be beautiful and glorious.
Go ahead.
And the fruit of the earth shall be excellent and comely.
So now, the Most High is going to start taking the curse off the daughters of Zion that's on them. Okay? We're going to show you what the curses were. At one time, it's a chapter before that, I'm going to show you. At one time, the daughters of Zion's hair used to be to their foot. Like all the way to their foot. Not only did they have the beauty that everyone loved, but their hair was down. Their hair would cover their shape. That's how much hair they had. Because of their haughty spirit against their man in the Old Testament, the Most High smote the daughter of Zion, where her hair don't grow like the other tribes.
No way.
I can show you. That's why in her spirit, naturally, she go out to get hair and all that. She knows something is missing in the spirit.
Whoa.
And the other nations know it. That's why they made the hair. Because they knew that that's what the women had in the old time.
Is that an idea where it says you won't wear pretty jewelry anymore, you won't be dainty?
Yeah, where it says instead of well-set hair, baldness,
Right, yeah,
that happened to our sisters.
Get out of here. That's why sisters have problems with
Yes.
problems with the mental health.
Yes, and the other tribes don't have it. Gad don't have it. Ephraim don't have it. But it's just primarily Judah, Benjamin, and Levi because they had all the outward beauty and everything, and they used it against the man. And the Most High was like, well, hold up. Since you now are acting above your man now, I'm going to smite you with a curse. So that's another reason people know who the daughters of Zion are in this day. The Bible is real.
We've always wondered why black women of all the race, their hair doesn't grow the same way. We've always wondered.
Yeah, but they used to have, they had it more beautiful than any other woman. It was a curse. Yeah, it was a curse. Yes, it was a curse. That's because they started using their beauty against their man. The Most High really have a big problem with women overtaking the man. That's a big issue with the Most High. He's going to set it straight.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah, that's because, America. You see what they're doing over there in Iran right now? They're doing the same thing, promoting individualism. Now the women are marching. When really,
That's a disgusting country. I mean, my brother was there, and he said all the men sleep together, all of them. He said it's normal. It's normal. My brother was there.
all the what do what?
All the men sleep together. My brother, rebuilt Iran, was there, and he said it's the most disgusting place. He said part of their unwritten law is that men are for pleasure and women are for children. And the only time they sleep with women is during the monsoon. They said women are like animals.
Next up, Minister Louis Farrakhan. By the way, before we go on to Louis Farrakhan, how can any intelligent woman follow such nonsense? Are they not aware that the man who's speaking, Elder Rakar, and the man next to him they have the same kind of hair that they're saying that the black American woman or the black woman was cursed with? Were they not cursed then too? Are they actually saying that somehow black people are different than every other kind of people? Every other type of people, the men have the exact same kind of hair as the women. Right? Exact same kind of hair. So it wasn't a curse when it wasn't a curse when the black man had it originally, and he had something different than his woman. But then the woman got cursed. Just utter nonsense, and the women are going, whoa, ah, ooh, wah. See, and this is why the GOCC and the kinds of branches of the Hebrew Israelites who embrace the North American Indians and the Mexicans and the white Cubans or whitish Cubans and so on as being of the same nation is because they want to vicariously be them. They do not want to be black. And they take that out most harshly on black women. But here is Louis Farrakhan. He goes even further and deeper with it. Here you go.
So Shabazz was not permitted to stay in that area, so he took his family into the jungle of East Asia, which we now call Africa, to make a people close to nature. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, this is the origin of kinky hair, because we didn't have kinky hair prior to that. The hair on our head was like the hair on our eyebrows. The hair on your eyebrows straight, the hair on your head is not the same as the hair on your eyebrow. But the hair of every other people is the same as their eyebrow. Your eyebrow straight, your hair something different. Wouldn't you like the hair on your head to be as straight as the hair on your eyebrow?
No.
That's why you so busy frying it. That's why you so busy pulling it. Because your nature tells you that the kink I mean, you know, with I'm black and I'm proud, we got to learn to be proud of kinks. Because most of your family of other black people on the earth, jet black. They didn't have no broad nose and thick lips and kinky hair. They were dark-skinned people, jet black, but they had straight hair, a thinner lip, a thinner nose. But we are marked as a different kind of black person. And we were rejected and despised, not only from the circle of the gods, but we were despised and rejected by all the other dark people of the earth. This is why today black people with kinky hair and broad nose and thick lips are rejected in every society. I want you to hear me well tonight. Yes, sir. Why are we rejected? Because the essence of beauty is in obedience and submission to God. And the essence of ugliness is when you rebel against God. And when you rebel against God, in your rebellion, you are marked with a certain mark of your rebellion, which is the disfigurement of your internal self, which manifests in the disfigurement of your external self.
Okay? We are disfigured. And here we go again with them trying to project themselves onto people who are not black. Dark-skinned people with straight hair and thinner lips and thinner noses are not black people. You want to say they are black people because you want to project yourself as being them, and that you would be them had you not been cursed. Lord, I'm using their religious terms. Now, the point is that type of self-hatred, how do you galvanize people to do the types of things they need to do for themselves? Whether you're Louis Farrakhan with the Nation of Islam or Elder Rakah with the Gathering of Christ Church Hebrew Israelites. How do you galvanize people to do the things that they need to do for themselves? How do you do that when all you're doing is reinforcing that they're not worthy, that they are cursed, and the reminder and badge of their accursedness is their our disfigurement. How we look is a disfigurement. You cannot galvanize people to do the things that they need to do for themselves vis-a-vis against the declared and historical enemy, which is non-black peoples, many of which you're trying to say are you. At least Louis Farrakhan, I mean, it's all bad, because Louis Farrakhan went into facial features and not just hair, but this is why the algorithm I created weights them, with hair being the most heavily weighted trait in the score in determining whether or not somebody is black, and then skin color next. And you take into account all of the stuff that Farrakhan is talking about. But listen, if you can't even get that straight, you need to sit down. You dislike black people. You dislike yourself, but you dislike black people. And you've arranged this whole theology that allows you to hate black people and yet somehow make yourself feel better, because as a male, what you're going to try to do is project your image, who you are, onto other kinds of women, saying that they are your kind of women. This is why Elder Rakaw and the Gathering of Christ's Church cannot let go of the pale-skinned, straight-haired Indian and their admixed kin, the Mexicans and the various Latinos around the Americas, can't let go of them being part of the Hebrew Israelites. You need to believe that they're you, because you hate yourself so much. And you cannot do anything for people when yourself. You cannot do anything for people when you hate them. And he sat there and listened to that girl talk about why her hair was so kinky now. You know what else has kinks? And you think I'm going to say lamb's wool, which that's certainly true. Its superior ability to keep things warm and also to ventilate when things get too warm and you need it to be cold is generated by the fact that it has kinks in it. That's why it's a superior fabric for certain kinds of uses. And that's what it's for on our heads. Okay? And here you see, this was recent. You see it, December 8th, 2019. This is a black Zimbabwean woman, a black woman from South Africa. Her name is Zozebini Tunzi, and she was crowned Miss Universe in 2019, just the one most recent. You see they're putting a crown in her head, and whose hair do you think a crown would stay in more? And what do you think a crown is actually symbolic for? Probably the first people, this is just my theory, but I'll show you some other images that I think back it up. Probably the way the hair stands up, like a crown, that's natural for our hair. Probably the first people that showed non-black people anywhere how to do things were like gods, like royalty. And so in emulation, when we left, or when they rose up against us, but yet they knew where the origins of their civilization came from, anything that was worth anything, in emulation of that, they put a crown on their head that stands up like our hair. But you can see that this didn't stop her from being seen as beautiful, and it never has. This idea of long hair, whether it grows away from your face or down towards your feet as being a feminine trait, is ridiculous. I know that the Bible says that a woman's crowning glory is her hair, but you got to take into account who wrote the thing, who compiled it, because it's not that any one person wrote the Bible. You know, it was a compilation, and it's not. There's a lot of wisdom in the Bible, you know, but that's not one of them. But anyway, this idea that the length of a woman's hair determines her femininity, and that long hair is a mark of femininity is absurd and really a pretty recent one, a pretty recent idea, which is probably pretty shocking to a lot of listeners. But the general question is, I mean, okay, so you Google just like I did. Does women's hair grow faster? Let's look at the answer. In general, men's hair grows faster than women's. They talk about pregnancy can speed it up. But men's hair grows faster. Remember Samson in the Bible? His strength was in his hair. Hairiness is a masculine trait. If you wanted to say which did more, which gender does more of a thing, and then decide from there whether something is feminine and masculine, then long hair would be masculine. And you know what would be feminine? Fatness. So if you want, so what we should have for the ideal of masculinity is super long hair, and for the idea of femininity is obese women, right? Okay. I took a legal process class at the University of Cambridge in England. And at one point we had to do, not like a mock trial, but sort of a mock dialogue as a barrister. A barrister is an attorney in England, but it's the type of attorney that can actually represent somebody in court. They have other types of attorneys called solicitors that can do anything except represent somebody in court. But anyway, you have to wear a wig. They had a robe. So when it was your turn, you were supposed to put the robe on and the wig. And I was handed the wig. It's a classroom full of white people now from all over the world, mostly the United States. But anyway, the instructor was this white English woman. And she handed me the wig, and I said, this really happened. No, I don't need one. I have one already. I don't need that. I have that already on my head. She didn't think it was funny. I wasn't really telling a joke. I just wasn't going to put the darn thing on. Why would I put on a cheap imitation of my actual natural hair? And I didn't have my hair straightened or in braids or anything. So, yeah. And if you look at the most ancient ones, or you look at even some of the modern ones, look. What do you think they're emulating? This goes back to the idea of the crown. What do you think they're emulating in order to judge righteously, to judge with wisdom? You are emulating the people who taught you how to do that. The first Europeans were black. You can go find the history books on that. We civilized the British Isles and every place in Europe. Kinky hair is a curse? Europeans certainly don't think so. Because when they sit in positions of power to judge wisely and with great consequence, they wear our hair. White women have never thought long flowing hair, not really. They have never really truly believed that long flowing hair was beautiful. And therefore, neither did their men. So let's go through the 1920s. Actually, I'm going to show you something in the 1800s as well. But white women have always wanted body to their hair. They've never just wanted it silky straight. They've always wanted to put some kind of curl and crimp into it. Let's just scroll through. As you're looking, you see how they keep trying to curl it now? In that day, this is the 1920s. They didn't have the ability to. They could have worn the kind of barrister wigs, I guess. But I mean, that's pretty unwieldy. They didn't have the ability at that point to make their hair crinkly, with lots of body that you didn't have to do much to for it to look like a crown. But they wanted it to have body. This is the 1920s. They had it up. They had it short. Every once in a while you'll see it longer, but it's got body. It's got curl. Nothing hanging down straight. And let me tell you why they wore it away from their hair, from their face so much. That's enough for that decade. Because a woman's neck, when she's young, is one of the most elegant, most feminine, naturally feminine things. Now that is a biological thing that's different than men. Women have more slender necks than men. Smoother necks. And when when hair is short, it emphasizes the femininity of that line, the line of the neck. A woman can wear a lot of makeup or have done a great job keeping her face looking youthful. But the first cue that she's aged beyond childbearing years is her neck. This is what was the last decade? What decade is this? 1920s? Do I have two of them for the 1920s? It's okay. Okay, that's fine. Which decade is this? It's something else. This was an article that I clicked on from it, and this was about the 20s, and they were talking about how much they wanted hair that was curly, but then they wanted it short. And then it was, well, the Bible and their family were telling them not to cut their hair. But they want to look pretty. So they pretended to, they had styles that made it look shorter. These aren't them. (1923) waved long hair and gathered back into a flat bun for this faux bob, in other words, faux cut. Off the face, they put a black woman in there. Off the face, short so the neck can be seen. This is the 1940s. Again, body to the hair. Off the face, off the neck, so you can see the youthfulness of the neck, the elegance and the femininity of the neck. Why do you think women adorn their neck with pearls and jewelry? If you look at the old movies, you won't see white women with hair hanging down super straight. I'll tell you when that happened. I witnessed it. I was part of that history. And I'll tell you when that happened and why it happened. We'll get there really soon. So this was the 1940s? (1950s), this is why women are not proud to have silky straight hair. They're trying to get body to their hair so they can look civilized. Body, you see it's not hanging down long. Here's one that's long. But, a lot of times what they'll say is if you don't necessarily have a beautiful neck or a beautiful face, then you probably need something to distract the eye from your face and neck. That's when you want to have long hair as a distraction. But if you look like this woman right here, Miss Universe from South Africa, you want to put that face and neck front and center. You don't want any distractions from it. Hopefully I can get back to where I was. 1940s, I think we did that one. 1950s, we got the same thing going on. And back then, when black women would straighten their hair, straight through to the late 60s, the styles were not that different. Because black women were trying to emulate the kind of texture, but they didn't realize that white women all along had been trying to emulate ours. But look at the short hair. There's no long hair is not it's not a secondary sex characteristic. Primary sex characteristics are the genitalia, the vagina and the penis, testes. If you know the scrotum, you can see that. You can't see ovaries, but that is a primary sex characteristic. Secondary sex characteristics are, for women, it's in between mammary glands. For women, breasts, hips, that's a secondary sex characteristic for women. A larger butt. For men, secondary sex characteristics are a deeper voice, thicker fingers, a hairier body, height, a more prominent brow ridge, hair on the face. But length of hair is not a sex characteristic. And to the extent that it is, to the minor extent that it is, it's with men. It's a masculine characteristic. Now, women we like to adorn ourselves. We like to do different things with the way that we look. But that can be done with short hair. That can be done with jewelry. That can be done with the way you adorn your fingers and your toes. The clothes you wear. Okay, so that was the 1950s. 1960s. You still see that short hair. I remember, I was a little tiny kid, but I remember long hair was not a thing. It was not like every time it was black and white TV or color had just come in, just about all the young women had hair that was not beyond their shoulders. It was either swept up or short haircuts were a big deal. And here now you see it getting straighter, but they still, like, they used hairspray so that it would have some body to it, and then they would puff it up. They didn't just let it lay limp. The limpness is what goes with the lankness of the hair. The straightness of the hair is what goes against it looking full and like a crown. They know that. We have ready-to-wear hair that is elegant and regal, meaning like royalty. Hence the crown, hence the barrister wig. They were beginning to know that, but see, now this is the beginning. You still see in the early 60s, these were the styles. This was a typical style, typical style, typical style. Right through about as I recall, 1965. Oh, I was too young for that. 1966, 1967. This right here, Farrah Fawcett, this is the 70s. We'll get to that momentarily. Let's just see what else we have here. Yeah, this was very typical. Swept off the face. There's Miss Diana Ross. Okay. With that kind of afro, that length, wearing natural hair that length, the pain, if it's natural, the pain that it takes to wear that type of afro, unless you're mixed and you really have just curly hair that you're teasing out, the pain and the time that it takes, it's just an impractical and also sort of self-flagellating. It's a sort of masochistic hairstyle because it's pop, snap, crackle, pop. But yeah, anyways, emphasis on the white women. You're starting to see it change a little bit, but you still see now it's starting to change because we're getting to the late 60s. Now, when it started to change, let me tell you when it started to change, and then I'll show you a picture of it. You got to understand that the nonviolent civil rights movement, where black people were very vigorously fighting for more freedom here in the United States, happened, kind of hit its penultimate in the early 60s. 63, 64, 65. 66 even, maybe. Okay, and then right around then is when the Black Power movement started up with the Black Panther movement. And the Afros, okay? And there were blaxploitation movies with Foxy Brown and Pam Grier, and they had these afros, and just out in the street, women were wearing afros. And black women, you know, come on. You know, regardless of the size, there were lots of black women that had body for days. And I'm talking about the physical body, you know, from the shoulders to the feet. Okay, along with, of course, ready to go, ready to wear hair almost, right? So, white women as a war move, you know, sexual reproduction and your position in that is a matter of life and death in terms of your genes going forward. So their war move was to say, okay, well, what characteristic do we have that black women don't have? Now, all along, it's been that thing that they wish they didn't have, but what they did is they pulled a reverse psychology, Tom Sawyer, and they did it to black women and black men to make us think that they really coveted long, lanky hair, because that was to get back at us, to make sure that we didn't take their place, which is where we were before the system of anti-blackness, global anti-blackness, took hold. Okay? They didn't want us to get back there. So that is when the Black Power movement of the late 1960s and into the early 1970s, that's when white women started the flipping the hair thing. That's when they started with the Farrah Fawcett look. And if they saw a man, white or black, take a second look at a black woman, they started flipping their hair. That's when that started. That's when the long, straight stuff started. Then, it's all very political. People want to say hair's not political. But politics is just an extension of war. And war is just an extension of sex. Everything's an extension of sex because sex is the primal urge to survive as an individual, and then your genetics. Your individual genetics. But if you have other people of your kind that are concerned about their individual genetics, then they get into a cooperative, a union, a system. So what happened is they just used reverse psychology. What's the definition of reverse psychology? Wiki says that reverse psychology is a technique involving the assertion of a belief or behavior that is opposite to the one desired, with the expectation that this approach will encourage the subject of the persuasion to do what is actually desired. A technique involving the assertion of a belief or behavior that is the opposite of the one desired. So, you know, white men wanted black men to believe that they found white women more attractive than black women. Now, white women, if they'd heard the stories or were descendants of what was happening down there in those slave shacks in the South, they knew better. They knew that their husbands couldn't wait. You know, they might be brand new married. Their husbands couldn't wait till sundown to go out and take a tobacco smoke and really be down there in those slave shacks. In as degraded a state in our attire as we were. White women know that. So they're both the male and the female, both the non-black male and the black female are pulling a reverse psychology. Because I showed you all the pictures of all the years before. I thought I had one of the 1800s too. Let me see if I have it. I'll just go through them. Let me see. I hope I do. 20s, 30s, barrister wig. I know I had it once. I'm going to type it in. Hairstyles of women, 1800s. Images. You see how it's swept off their neck? Here it's long and curly. Same here. But look how many examples of it is swept off their neck. And the more beautiful the woman, you'll notice that the queens, Queen Elizabeth, Queen Victoria, they wore their hair short because it's regal. Swept up, short. Not bald, but accentuating the elegance of the neck. So, Elder Rakah and all of your henchmen, you're not psychologically healthy enough to lead black people and to help us have pride. You want us to have pride in ourselves because we're actually the chosen people, the people of the Bible, but then you're telling us that we're cursed. It's some behavior that caused us to be in the condition that we're in. That's what they preach. That the system of anti-blackness is a result of our misbehavior against God. And then Elder Rakah takes it further and puts the misogyny in there, because at another time I will explain why the system of anti-blackness is a manifestation of misogyny, of patriarchy. But he takes it another step further in his twisted logic and says that the reason that black women have short, kinky hair is because we were haughty against black men. That's why. And, you know, the North American Indian, the straight-haired pale ones, and the Mexicans, and the Samoans, and the Hawaiians, and the Puerto Ricans, and the Cubans, they're his kind, but they weren't haughty against their men. That sounds like what just the modern guy talking about hating black women says on YouTube. Just, he's saying it with a turban on his hair, with that same nappy hair that I guess his nappy hair wasn't cursed. And Louis Farrakhan, how in the world, you see how young he was in his 40s, it looks like here, at the latest 50s. How in the world did he stay at the top of the Nation of Islam that long, having said something like that? And of course, with him, with the Nation of Islam, and that's so opposite to what Malcolm said, right? He said, who taught you to hate your hair? Who taught you to hate your nose, and your skin and all that? So how did he stay at the top? How did he do that? But it explains why he has joined forces with those white people in the Church of Scientology. It explains why there was no huge uproar that his son married a white woman. That's enough. It's just something I had to say. I know that last time I said it would probably be a long time before I came back and did another video. Because I've been shadow banned. I know I have been shadow banned. And plans are in the works. Plans are in the works to make sure that, to try something different. To try to reach people through a way that cannot be stopped by YouTube shadow banning me. We have a plan. It's not just me. We do have a plan. But in the meantime, my sister convinced me, because we both lived through COINTELPRO. We lived it. We picked up our phone and heard them talking about us when we would pick up our telephone in the house. We witnessed people taking clothes out of our house just doing things to gang stalk us, taking clothes out of our house. We wouldn't be able to find it. And then after we were just trying to tear the house up, trying to find very expensive pieces of clothing, a month later, 3 versions of that same piece of clothing would show up in the closet. We lived through that. We lived through people following us. And so because of that, I've been really motivated to study COINTELPRO, how it works, and likely how it works, you know, in the new age. So, I mean, you know, in the internet age and social media. So she encouraged me because we lived through it together. She said, clearly what you're doing is reaching some people, far more people than you think. And even if it's only reaching a small number of people, ideas are like waves, they travel. Do not let them stop you in the meantime. While you're trying to get another method of getting your message out, don't let them stop you. That's what they want to happen. I'll be very disappointed in you if you stop. So this is for my sister. I agreed with her, and that's why this is here. Hey, listen, let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know what you, let me know if you disagree with me, but, you know, just let me know what you think in the comments. As always, it's helpful if you like, share, or even if you dislike it. You know, I have a couple of dedicated haters that crack me up every time I look at my videos. I'm on their brain. I love that. You know, every time I have a video, it's just these 1 or 2, and it's probably the same person putting out, clicking it. Let me tell a little story, and then I'm going to go. It's a little story. And this has to do with Louis Farrakhan and Elder Akah. Very recently, within the last few months, a young black male reached out to me, and he wanted to, what did he want to do? He wanted to do something, but I said, listen, I need to know who you are first. What did he want to do? I don't know, but I said, listen, I need to talk to you first. So we set up a conference call line, and, you know, it was private, and I began talking with him. And it was a long conversation. He quite obviously really needed someone to talk with, but he had just been turned on to the works of Neely Fuller and Frances Welsing, and then he'd seen my work, and my work takes it to another level. So he wanted to talk, but what he wanted was a community of people who were experienced practitioners of counter-racism 2, 3, and 4.0. And I'll explain what 2, 3, and 4.0. Let me just tell you what 2.0 is. 2.0 is the definition of racism being anti-blackness, not white supremacy. 3.0 is recognizing that the true target of anti-blackness, with the domino strategy of getting the male first, is the black woman. The black woman is the true target. And I'm not going to go into 4.0 for right now. Okay. But this young black man wanted to be in a community. He had seen the website counterracism.com, and he knew that it had gone defunct. And he wanted a community of people to learn and grow with. And I said, well, you know, you're so new to this. You know, why don't you study some more? But I said, okay, well, let me see, you know, maybe once every 2 or 3 months, I can get together a couple of people who are close associates of mine, and we can just have some hangouts, some group chats. But in the process of it, he was telling me things about his mom, who raised him, and how difficult it was because she was light-skinned, and he was the only dark-skinned person in the family. I think his father was African, I think from Nigeria. And that he was the only dark-skinned person in his family because his mother's side of the family was light. And he told me some very disturbing things that his mother had done to him. Now, you want to know what this has to do with this particular video and even the story? Well, the point is that before I was willing to introduce him to my colleagues, I wanted a show of good faith. And because he had told me during the conversation that he had video of his mother abusing him, recent video. And he offered during the conversation to let me see it. So before I set up the conference or even requested the conference with my colleagues, I said, in good faith, let me see the video. Because I want to know, is this guy a liar? Who is this guy? I mean, if you said you have it, let me see it. Because he told me what his name was and whatnot. And so he sent it to me. And he showed me a woman who was a little bit darker than Gabrielle Union. Okay? And this is the woman he said was light-skinned. Now, clearly, and he had said that not too long ago he had straightened all of his hair, and he was always straightening his hair. The guy had some stuff to work out. And so I had to tell him, please, if you're seeing professional counselors, a qualified Black professional health practitioner, mental health practitioner, continue to see that person. You are not healthy enough to be engaging in conversations with me and my colleagues. And furthermore, you need to learn to study, listen to a bunch of videos, not just mine, but other people's. Read a lot of books. Let's listen, learn, take a couple, 3 years to learn this stuff before you start entering into conversations with people who are that much more advanced than you. And this is what I'm saying about Rakah and Farrakhan. Actually, I should say Shiar, because it's Elder Rakah Shiar and Minister Louis Farrakhan. You're not healthy enough psychologically to lead Black people. And you're doing untold damage to Black people. But you're really focusing on Black women. Notice all the Black women even in the audience when Farrakhan was speaking. Elder Rakah Shiar was speaking directly to Black women and his twisted logic of how Black women's hair got cursed, but he has the same kind of hair and Black men weren't cursed. But Farrakhan was speaking about Black people generally, but then he did an aside and said, well, this is why you're always trying to fry your hair, because you know naturally what your hair is supposed to be like. And he had all those women out there in that congregation, if that's what they call it in a mosque, smiling and nodding with their heads covered. You're not qualified. You're not mentally well enough to lead anything for those people who do follow. And there are a lot of us, apparently. Sir, step away from the mic. Sit down. And Elder Rakah, what you said about women not being able to lead and telling them that any woman who thinks that she can lead is going against Christ, is going against the Most High himself or itself, and you said, sit down? No, sir, you need to sit down. You're not healthy enough to lead what you say is God's chosen people. Just like I told that young man, I got no hate for you, but you know, if I was looking to, if I was, I'm gonna go in the opposite direction that the people usually go. If I was looking to bulk up a little bit because I just thought I was, or quite a bit because I just could never gain any weight and I was just too thin and had no shape, I'm not gonna go to a personal trainer who looks like a sack of bones. If I wanted to lose a bunch of fat, I don't want an obese trainer. Now, you may have a lot of knowledge. You might, and it might be a matter of do what I say and not what I do, but generally speaking, what's really in your head, what's really motivating you to say and do certain things, it's going to come out when you interact with other people too. Okay, this has been the Counter-Racist Evolving Engineer program for, it is now, Monday morning. That's when I recorded it. It's about 3 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. I'm a night owl. But I think I'm gonna schedule this for like 10 a.m., like 7 hours from now. Yeah, like I said, like, share, subscribe, stay stay safe, and stay healthy. Signing out.